Good morning, everyone. And this is the start of our fourth week of the program. I'm Craig Nippenberg. We want to apologize for the technical issues. We're getting started late, and I'm disappointed. We will have them on, but one of my therapists, Mike Villarreal, and his lovely wife, Sydney, both working at home. Sydney does our IT. They were going to be talking this morning about working at home as a couple with three children. Unfortunately, the tech at their house wasn't working. So I'm on for about 15 minutes. I have to teach a graduate school class here at a little after 10. So I'm just going to do today's program will just be a hodgepodge of some questions or things I've been observing during this time of waiting, the waiting place. I was tickled. I was in the Huffington Post this morning, and they put my concept in about Dr. Seuss and the waiting place and how our character doesn't really care for that. And that's the place we are all in. So today I'll just do kind of a hodgepodge things of conversations I've had or issues I've noticed with friends and here at the office. And then Mike and Sydney will be with us on Thursday instead of today. One of the ones that was a fun conversation with my friend Sandy. Sandy heads up a program here in Denver called MOBS, which stands for Mothers of Boys. And to be a member of the group, you have to have three or more boys and no girls. And just did a talk for them on the social brain and how electronics impacts the brain about 3 months ago. And they're just the most lovely group of moms, 20 or 30 of them there. Some with 3, 4, 5 boys, and lots of testosterone in the house. And Sandy's got 4 herself, older ones, middle school, high school, all very active athlete types. And she was just talking about how hard it is being at home with all 4 of them and finding things to do. And I said, well, this is, you want to take one from my mom's playbook, which I had 2 brothers myself. So we had 3 boys in our family and 2 girls. But it was pretty routine that nearly every day my mom would say, especially on the weekends or in the summer, my mom would just say, boys, outside. And outside we would go. And we were expected to stay outside for several hours till she told us we could come back home. My sisters usually ended up reading in their rooms, so they weren't a nuisance to her. But we certainly were with all our energy. And we were fortunate enough to have a unfinished downstairs basement. Half of it was unfinished, and we had set up a hockey rink down there for floor hockey, and we could just go down there and play for hours on end and stay out of mom's hair. So this might be a good time. The weather's been cold here in Denver the last 2 days, but it's sun shining and beautiful today. This is a good time for the kids, to get outside. 2 of the hardest groups, and I mentioned this in the first podcast, those who have preschoolers, and you're trying to work at home. I saw a great article in the Wall Street Journal a couple of days ago about the importance of walkie-talkies. Now, that's what they called them when I was a kid, and it was sort of those World War II fashioned walkie-talkies. They were rather large. Now I think we have these things called talkabouts. I think that's what you call them. I have a set somewhere. But how his young daughter has one, and the father has one in his office. And we know that preschoolers are in need of lots of attention, and they love to be affirmed by their parents. They love to say, look at what I'm doing, mommy, or daddy, look what I'm doing on the swing set, or watch me, daddy. And they love that feedback from their parents. Now, in normal circumstances, you would be with your preschooler outside, a little playtime on the weekend, and you can devote your full attention to them and just applaud them and tell them how proud you are of them and happy for them. That's the best. In this case, what the father learned was his daughter could just get on her talkabout and tell him where she was in the house and what she was doing. And then his office had a window out to their backyard. And so when she was out on the play structure and trying to do, hang upside down or do the monkey bars, and first the kids want to learn how to do the monkey bars. Then the next step up is you do the monkey bars, but you skip one of the bars in the middle and you go from 2 to 2 monkey bars. And she would be able to just get on her walkie-talkie or talk about and say, Daddy, watch me, look at this. And he could look out at the window and watch her. So he found that as a real lifesaver during this time where he has to work. and his daughter needs lots of attention. I would also encourage for your preschoolers and kindergartners that you make a mandatory nap time or rest time. The kids at school do that. In kindergarten, they have their mats they pull out. The preschoolers take a nap for 30 minutes. Kindergartners will pull their mats out and have just quiet time or rest time, and they can read a book or that sort of thing. And I highly would recommend having rest time for your kids each day, to have them downtime for them and some free time for you. And thinking about that, one of the most joyous times of my life was when my son was 4 and 5, and I was able to take time off from my job. I usually worked in the afternoons and evenings, and frequently in the mornings we would go on an adventure here in Colorado, and we'd go for hikes or go all sorts of places, or build sand castles. Then I would have our little pop-up tent with us, little 2-person tent, and after lunch we'd have a little picnic lunch, and then I'd set up the tent and we would have nap time. And he was sleeping about an hour then, and I'd get about 20 minutes of rest in. I'd have my work charts with me, and I'd wake up and do chart notes while he was sleeping next to me, which is still one of the most joyous things you can experience, is your child sleeping next to you and just listening to him breathe. And then he'd finally wake up, and I would say to him, "Hi, are you awake?" And he'd say, "Yes. Are you awake?" And I'd say, "Yes." And then he'd say, "Do you want to go do something?" And I'd say, "Yes." "Do you want to go do something?" And he'd say, "Yes." And out of the tent we would burst, and back to whatever digging or building or tree collecting or pine cone finding we were doing, and have another hour or two of fun. So I'd highly encourage those nap times and rest times. The second group that's really hit is the parents with older teens and the college kids coming home. That creates a unique kind of tension, especially for your college students who are really used to freedom and their normal lives and activities on campus and being with friends and managing their own studying habits, hopefully in a diligent way. And now they're at home, and parents are there, and parents are asking them what they're doing, and they don't want to be asked what they're doing. They just want to have their freedom. The main thing I'd recommend on that is your college in his room or her room. They can manage their studies, they can be online with their friends, chat in, and kind of live out their lifestyle. Now, part of that lifestyle is going to be later bedtimes, often staying up till 1, 2, 3 in the morning, sleeping until 11. So you have to embrace some of that. The key is to have a rule about quiet hours in the house, and that your young adult can stay up, but you can't be waking mom and dad up and with being too loud or walking around the house and making a disturbance. It also raises just the roommate issues of cleanliness. And when your young adult has left the milk out on the counter, or they have the glasses piled up in their rooms and snacks on the floor, if you go in there and correct them every time you see something, you're just going to be in for a lot of stress and a lot of turmoil with your college student. I recommend you just have one time a day, 1 or 2 times a day, where you say, "Hey, look, these are the times you need to clean out the room, or you need to clean up the kitchen, or any messes you've made, and a few chores for the family." So I would just have 1 or 2 set times a day that those things need to be done. And then you pretty much leave them alone, and they will probably leave you alone. Now, the other joy you can have is family dinners, and also game nights, playing some board games. Some of my best memories of as a college student would be coming back home, and we'd play Uno, which was something we played every Sunday night when I was a kid. Or we'd have these titanic battles on the board game Risk, and we would play for 3 or 4 hours with my brothers, sisters, and just a tremendous amount of fun. So you want to engage them in board games. You can also set up a contract with them, a written contract about here's what mom and dad expect, here's what the college student wants. You negotiate that out, write it up, and then I'd recommend at least every other night, about 3 times a week, you just have some time, maybe at dinner, and just talk about how's the contract working, what are some adjustments that we need to make this work for everyone. So trying to structure that time where you can just talk calmly versus it being an explosion over the chip bags are all dried up or some other small thing like that. Now, on another note, I think it's really important as this time of waiting goes on is to recognize that it gets on everyone's nerves. And so when we're edgy, our anger and our stress tends to come out around little things. My brother was touching my Legos, or he wouldn't let me have my turn on the TV set. All sorts of little things that we get irritated about. You left the toilet seat up again, or you didn't run the dishes when you were supposed to. They tend to come out around those little things. And it's important as a family when those emerge is to just stop for a second and just go, before we discuss this, we need to think about the bigger picture. The bigger picture right now is that we're in quarantine and we're all sheltered in place, and that takes a toll on everybody. So what we're really mad about is being sheltered in place. We're mad at this virus, and it's causing us to have stress living together. And these are normal living situations that pop up. Then you can address the situations at hand and come up with solutions for everyone. But you really want to recognize the larger picture. So often when we get in a conflict with someone, we develop those thoughts about they're doing it on purpose, or why aren't the kids respecting me? I've told them this 1,000 times. Why is my spouse not respecting to me? They're not listening to me. We want to personalize it with the other person. And it really is stepping back from that and saying, wait a minute, this is about our process related to being in the sheltered space. And it's no different when people are grieving. And if you are a family that's grieving over a loss or a loved one who's in the hospital, you have to talk about this is exhausting. This is part of the grief process. The grief takes time. We all experience grief in phases and have different emotions at different times. And we want to recognize and honor that's what's going on for us. It's not necessarily all these small things. It's just that we're under stress. We're grieving illness. We're grieving sickness. We're grieving being stuck at home together and not having our normal activities. And in fact, 90% of the things happening in your home right now wouldn't be happening during normal times because your kids would be at school, you'd be at work, you'd be doing your normal activities and routines. These things wouldn't be happening. So you have to keep that in mind and then specifically address certain issues that hopefully you can make some changes. Finally, I'm going to let Sid and Mike, they're going to address working at home. My wife and I are both working out of the home, and our 14-year-old daughter's there. She did get her bedroom entirely completed, and it is fabulous. I took some pictures this weekend and posted it on Instagram. She was so excited about her adventure and what she's created in the house. And one of her treats was having her hair dyed by my wife. She now has bright red hair, and she's thrilled with being a redhead right now. So you have to kind of just take things as they come, try to find some moments of appreciation, but also with working together, we found one of the things that really helps us is we all have sort of our sacred space. Now, sometimes those will rotate. So when my wife wants to work out, she hasn't been able to outside the last couple of days, so she's in our bedroom working out, and I'm in the kitchen. My daughter's in her room. Sometimes she needs to do a Zoom group, and she'll take over the guest room for that. Or I have a Zoom conference or sessions. I might be in the kitchen, and everybody else stays out of the kitchen. We lock the dogs outside, so there's no barking. But you really want to try to compartmentalize your space so that everyone feels they have a space to do the work they need to do and a sacred space when things are chaotic. And with that, I want to end. I love poetry. I love sayings and philosophers. I have a whole collection of them. And this one has deep meaning to me. Years ago, when the STEM shooting happened here in Colorado, a student lost his life in a shooting at one of our local high schools. And my daughter's in middle school, and they had a special mass. She's at a Catholic school. And she made a little sign based on one of my favorite philosophers' quotes. His name is Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche was basically a nihilist, so not particularly cheery. but Friedrich Nietzsche had a quote that said, "Out of chaos comes a shooting star." And she made a poster of that for her school students' mass. And it said, "Out of chaos comes a shooting star." And then she wrote underneath it, "May we be that shooting star." So during these times now, when I was looking at her room and she was showing it all to me, there below her treasured jewelry cabinet, jewelry chest, she has an antique jewelry chest, and down on the bottom shelf is that poster. And we talked about how that is especially true right now, that we are in chaos, but we want to find shooting stars for the future. And we want to make sure that we as citizens of the world and citizens of this country do everything we can to get through this time and prevent future chaos. And that is what keeps humans alive and keeps humans evolving. So I hope at your own house, you will have some shooting stars today or this week. And look for the shooting stars or the adventures out of the chaos you're feeling. With that, I do have to depart to talk to graduate students. Thanks for tuning in. And again, Mike and Sydney will be on Thursday to talk about working at home together. Blessings to all of you. Take care.